You're watching South Asia Newsline, and here are the top stories we are tracking for you on Friday, the 15th of May. India's PM Modi meets UAE President to boost energy cooperation. India's Jaishankar calls for urgent reforms in UN at BRICS, holds key meetings. And Russia establishing partnership with Taliban, says senior official. And now for all the details. India and the UAE on Friday deepened cooperation in defense, energy and investments as Prime Minister Narendra Modi began his 5-nation tour from Abu Dhabi. Take a look.
India and the UAE strengthened strategic ties as Prime Minister Narendra Modi met UAE President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan in Abu Dhabi on Friday during the first leg of his 5-nation tour. The two countries signed agreements on strategic defense cooperation, petroleum reserves and liquefied petroleum gas supplies amid ongoing tensions in West Asia, and concerns over energy security. Prime Minister Modi condemned recent attacks on the UAE and reiterated India's support for dialogue and diplomacy. The two sides also signed in MoU for a ship repair cluster at Vatanar in Gujarat, while the UAE announced investment commitments worth $5 billion in Indian infrastructure and financial sectors.
UAE पर हुए हमलों की हम कठोर निंदा करते हैं। UAE को जिस तरह निशाना बनाया गया है, ये किसी भी रूप में स्वीकार्य नहीं है।
Trips to the UAE by heads of governments have been rare since the war began, and Iran launched strikes on the country. The UAE is one of India's biggest suppliers of crude oil and natural gas. In January, India signed a $3 billion deal to buy liquefied natural gas from the Gulf nation.
Meanwhile, India's Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar on Friday called for urgent reforms in global governance, saying key institutions like the UN Security Council continue to reflect an earlier era and no longer match present-day realities. Addressing the BRICS Foreign Ministers Meeting in New Delhi, Jaishankar said representation of Asia, Africa and Latin America in global decision-making bodies is essential for credible multilateralism. He stressed that reforms of the UN and its subsidiary bodies was not a matter of choice, but a necessity, as existing structures face growing scrutiny over declining trust and inefficiency. Jaishankar also underlined the need to reform the international financial architecture and strengthen the multilateral trading system. He also held a series of key bilateral meetings, including with Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi on the West Asia situation and counterparts from Thailand, Ethiopia and Egypt. India is officially chairing BRICS for 2026, leading key initiatives in digital public infrastructure, energy security and intra-bloc trade. Later in the day, Araghchi in a presser said Tehran has no trust in the US and is interested in negotiating with Washington only if it is serious and give diplomacy a chance.
Now, after 40 days of war, when the US became hopeless of achieving any goal in their aggression against Iran, they offered negotiation. We are interested in negotiation, but only if the other side is serious and is in line of real negotiations. We have no trust to Americans.
The Baloch Yakjehti Committee has welcomed recent UN observations highlighting alleged human rights abuses in Pakistan. The UN findings expose continued state repression and enforced disappearances in Balochistan.
The Baloch Yakjehti Committee, in a post on X, has welcomed recent observations by the United Nations Committee Against Torture, saying the findings expose what it described as Pakistan's continued crackdown on political dissent, human rights defenders, and minority activists. The BYC said the UN Committee's report validated long-standing allegations of enforced disappearances, arbitrary arrests, torture, and intimidation allegedly carried out by Pakistani authorities against critics of the state. Activists allege such actions are aimed at instilling fear among the Baloch population. The committee, in findings issued on May 1, expressed concern over cases involving prominent detainees and activists, including Imran Khan, Bushra Bibi, Marang Baloch, Idris Khattak, and Ali Wazir. It also raised concerns over reports of political prisoners and activists being denied proper medical treatment in custody. The BYC urged Islamabad to stop repression, review politically motivated detentions, ensure fair trial rights, and establish independent mechanisms to investigate torture and enforced disappearances. It said lasting stability in Pakistan depends on protecting human rights, freedom of expression, and democratic accountability.
And Russia is establishing a full-fledged partnership with Afghanistan's ruling Taliban and is encouraging other countries in the region to expand cooperation with Kabul. According to the Interfax news agency, senior Russian security official Sergei Shoigu said on Thursday that cooperation with Kabul was important for the next security and development of the region. Russia last year became the first country to formally recognize the Taliban government, which returned to power in August 2021 after the withdrawal of US-led forces following 2 decades of war. Although Russia had designated the Taliban as a terrorist organization in 2003, the ban was lifted in April 2025. Meanwhile, the United Nations mission in Afghanistan said the Taliban authorities have detained at least 3 journalists on unspecified charges. Those detained include the head of Kabul-based Baigad news agency and 2 staff members of Tolo News, Afghanistan's first 24-hour news channel. The Taliban's Ministry of Information and Culture confirmed the detention of the Tolo News journalists, saying investigations were underway without revealing details. The UN has called for the protection of journalists as right groups continue to rank Afghanistan among the world's most dangerous countries for media workers. Moving on, Bangladesh's economic outlook has come under renewed pressure after global credit rating agency Fitch Ratings revised the country's outlook from stable to negative while maintaining its long-term foreign currency issuer default rating at B+. Fitch cited growing macroeconomic and external financing risks linked to the ongoing conflict in the Middle East, which could significantly impact Bangladesh's economy. The agency noted that nearly half of Bangladesh's remittance inflows come from the Middle East, making the country vulnerable to any regional instability or disruption in overseas employment. Rising global energy prices are also a major concern as Bangladesh relies heavily on imported crude oil and petroleum products. Fitch further warned that slow progress in reforms related to public finances, banking, governance and institutional independence is weakening the country's ability to withstand economic shocks. The agency projected Bangladesh's growth at 3.7% in fiscal year 2026, while inflation is expected to remain high and pressure on foreign exchange reserves could continue in the coming months. And the Executive Board of the International Monetary Fund is expected to review Sri Lanka's staff-level agreement with the IMF in the coming weeks, IMF spokeswoman Julie Kozak said on Thursday. If approved, Sri Lanka will receive around $700 million under the IMF's Extended Fund Facility program. Sri Lanka reached the agreement in April, which includes reforms aimed at ensuring economic stability and growth, including changes in fuel levies. The country is recovering from its worst economic crisis in decades, which led to a foreign debt default in 2022 and a $2.9 billion IMF bailout program. However, the ongoing Middle East conflict has created new economic challenges, particularly through rising energy prices affecting many Asian nations, including Sri Lanka. Kozak said Sri Lanka must complete several prior actions before board approval, including restoring cost recovery for electricity and fuel pricing while protecting vulnerable groups. She praised the country's resilience in facing the combined impact of Cyclone Ditwa and the Middle East conflict and reaffirmed the IMF's support for Sri Lanka's economic recovery and reform efforts. That's all in tonight's edition. We will see you same time next week. Have a great weekend. Good night.